Cuba's landscape in 1902, small population and no industry. Cuba was a small island nation with no industry. In 1902, it had a population of only about 400,000 people. The country's economy was mainly agricultural, and the landscape was mostly covered in sugarcane plantations. However, after the Cuban Revolution in 1959, Cuba became an important exporter of sugarcane and tobacco for other countries. The revolution led to a dramatic increase in agricultural production, and Cuba's population rose to more than 11 million by the mid-2010s. Cuba is now highly dependent on its tourism industry as well as on remittances from Cuban Americans, who send money back to their families through various means such as direct transfers or via third-party companies such as Western Union. After the Soviet Union ended its economic and military assistance to Cuba in 1991, Cuba's economy suffered. In the mid-1990s, Cuba's economic crisis led to a number of reforms under Fidel Castro, who resigned as president in 2006 due to ill health. By 2010, however, the country saw its first real signs of recovery from this deep recession. Cuba's economy has been historically based on sugar production and other agricultural exports such as tobacco, citrus, and coffee. Other industries include nickel and iron ore mining, chemical processing, clothing manufacturing, construction materials, and tourism. Cuba has the largest pharmaceutical industry in the Caribbean region and a developing biotechnology sector. Cuba is also a leading exporter of medical practitioners worldwide. The Communist Party of Cuba is the only legal political party in Cuba. The Constitution of Cuba establishes the principles of democratic centralism. All elected members within the National Assembly are responsible to and elected by their local assemblies. It is not unusual for Cubans to hold multiple elected offices at jurisdiction and municipal levels, serving on provincial juntas, assemblies, and soviets. Cuba is an emerging market and a lower middle-income country in the world. Cuba's GDP is about $1,089 per capita with a GDP growth rate of 3%, 2016. The service sector contributes to nearly three-quarters of the nation's economy, followed by construction and public administration. Services include tourism, education and medical treatment, as well as the export of sugar, nickel and rum. Cuba has a large trade surplus with its main trading partners being Canada, China, Spain, and Venezuela. The country also has free universal education for all citizens from preschool to tertiary level. The Cuban state owns all major means of production in the country. Banks, mining companies, energy firms, and heavy industries such as construction and steel. The U.S. is the largest export market for Cuba, and a large tourism industry is also present. Food exports include coffee, citrus fruits, vegetables, and bananas. The country has developed its tourist industry to be largely self-sufficient. The U.S. imposed an embargo on Cuba that took effect in the early 1960s, following Fidel Castro's rise to power in 1959. Disney's Hotel Buena Vista Palace in Havana is where the filming of the movie Bed Knobs and Broomsticks took place. The U.S. has since lifted its embargo against Cuba. The beginning of the struggle for independence in Cuba. The struggle for independence in Cuba began in 1868 when José Martí, a Cuban intellectual and revolutionary, wrote an article that was published in La Civilización. This was the first article to be written about the fight for independence from Spain. The United States of America began to take an interest in Cuba after José Martí's article. The U.S. had been interested in Cuba since it became a Spanish colony, and they wanted to keep it under their control. In 1902, Cuba gained independence and Castro was given a pension of $20 a month to live off of. From 1905 to 1914, after Cuba gained independence, it became a republic ruled by Carlos Manuel de Céspedes. But he was overthrown in a coup and replaced by José Miguel Gómez. The Great Depression didn't affect Cuba as much as it did America because they were mostly self-sufficient. However, they still had to import things like coffee, sugar, and tobacco. There were two main sources of income during the Depression, which were farming, mostly rice, and tourism, so Cuba had to import rice as well. Cuba is a Caribbean country and has been inhabited by humans since the end of the last ice age 10,000 years ago. Cuba became a republic in 1902, and it was ruled by a military dictatorship of General José Miguel Gómez for decades. Cuba, like most Caribbean countries, does not have a system of private property ownership, nor does it have a well-developed market economy. So they import goods such as rice from other countries such as China to make up for that lack. Cuba's economy is now based primarily on tourism, remittances from Cuban Americans, and the country's medical sector. In 1838, Cuba became a protectorate of the United States after being sold to the USA by Spain. The economy was based on sugar plantations and an importation of manufactured goods from Europe. In 2014, an estimated 50% of Cuba's GDP came from its primary sector. Cuban independence from the United States in 1902. On October 10, 1902, the United States recognized Cuban independence from Spain. The event was a milestone in the history of Cuba and the United States. In 1868, Spain had ceded control of Cuba to the United States as a condition for ending their war with Mexico. In 1898, U.S. troops invaded Cuba and occupied it until they were forced to withdraw in 1902. The United States was eager to take control of its new colony as quickly as possible so that it could reap economic benefits from Cuba's sugar industry. The U.S. wanted to extract these benefits by instituting a plan that would make it difficult for Cubans to compete with U.S. businesses in trade and commerce. This was achieved by establishing a system that would make it difficult for Cuban farmers to sell their agricultural goods in Cuba. And then by taking possession of the land owned by Cuban landowners. The purpose of the embargo was not meant to have an effect on the Cuban economy, but rather, it was a means of controlling Cuba's foreign policy. The Cuban embargo was established on December 17, 1960. It was initially set to expire in 1984, and it has been extended every few years. The embargo affects the Cuban economy by restricting their importation of food, medical supplies, and other related items. Fidel Castro overthrew the government in Cuba and aligned his country with the Soviet Union. This led to feeling of resentment towards Cuba, who was viewed as a foreign nation taking advantage of the U.S. The embargo is meant to prevent this from happening again by restricting trade between the two countries. Other countries such as Canada and the European Union have criticized the embargo for its inability to achieve its desired end. That is to prevent Cuba from benefiting from trade with the United States. The U.S. government thinks that its goal of isolating Cuba is met, but many other countries disagree with this claim. Stay tuned for the secrets of Cuba's independence from the United States in 1902 Part 2. Don't forget to subscribe.